I heard every word she said about me. Furniture, invisible, taking up space. She never knew I was standing right there in the hallway, holding the dinner I brought home early to surprise her. But here's what my wife of 26 years didn't know. I've been planning my exit for 3 years, and the $1.2 million she thought didn't exist, it was already gone, along with me. My name is Daniel Rivers. I'm 50 years old, and I've spent the last 28 years working as a financial auditor for a Fortune 500 corporation. Not glamorous work, but steady, reliable, the kind of career that builds a comfortable life for my family. Even if my wife Jennifer never really understood what I did. She never asked, and after a while, I stopped trying to explain. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when everything changed. I'd driven home from the office exhausted from reviewing acquisition reports all day. The house was quiet when I walked in through the garage door. I heard Jennifer's voice coming from the living room, bright and animated, in a way she never sounded when talking to me anymore. I moved down the hallway, keys still in my hand, planning to let her know I was home. That's when I heard it. Honestly, Dana, he's like furniture at this point, Jennifer said, her voice carrying that fake cheerfulness she used with her friends. You know those old recliners people keep in the basement? That's Daniel, just there, taking up space. I stopped moving. My hand tightened around my keys. Dana's laugh crackled through the speakerphone. At least he brings home a paycheck, right? Barely, Jennifer replied. I mean, he works in some boring auditing job, numbers and spreadsheets. I stopped listening to him talk about it years ago. God, can you imagine 28 years of listening to someone drone on about financial compliance? I stood there in the hallway, 3 feet from the living room entrance, listening as my wife dismantled our marriage with casual indifference. She never wants to do anything exciting, Jennifer continued. Last week, I suggested we go to that new wine bar downtown, and he said he was too tired. Too tired? Like he's some executive working 80-hour weeks. Please. I heard her say it. She never knew I was standing right there. And in that moment, something inside me made a decision that would change everything. I didn't walk into the living room. I didn't announce my presence or demand an explanation. I simply turned around, walked back through the garage, got in my car, and drove. I left, and I knew even then that I would never turn back. I drove for 2 hours that night, heading west on Route 66 with no destination in mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The radio stayed off. I needed silence to think, to process what I'd heard. Jennifer thought I was furniture, boring, forgettable, taking up space. What she didn't know could fill volumes. For the past 15 years, I'd been quietly building something she knew nothing about. My position as a senior financial auditor at Hammond Industries paid well, very well. But Jennifer had never bothered to ask about the specifics. She knew I worked in finance, knew I left for the office at 7:30 every morning and came home around 6. Beyond that, she checked out years ago. What she didn't know was that my annual salary had grown to $240,000. She didn't know about the bonuses, sometimes reaching six figures that I'd been directing into separate accounts since our oldest son, William, was in elementary school. She didn't know about the investment portfolio I'd carefully built, now worth just over $1.2 million. Jennifer thought we lived on $70,000 a year because that's what I told her we made. She never questioned it, never asked to see tax returns or bank statements. She was too busy spending her salary from the marketing firm on designer clothes and weekend trips with their friends. I pulled into a rest stop somewhere past Manassas and sat in the dark parking lot, engine idling. My phone buzzed. Jennifer. I watched it ring, then go to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately. Another call. Then a text. Where are you? Dinner's ready. I stared at the message for a long moment, then turned the phone off completely. The thing about being invisible is that people forget you're watching. They forget you're listening. They underestimate what you're capable of planning when they dismiss you as harmless. I'd been planning this for 3 years, not consciously at first. It started small, opening a separate checking account that only I could access, then a safety deposit box at a bank across town, getting a P.O. box for statements Jennifer would never see. Small steps that built into something bigger. The final piece fell into place 6 months ago when I consulted with Howard, an old friend from college who'd become a divorce attorney. We had lunch, discussed hypotheticals, talked about asset protection and legal separation procedures. Howard gave me a blueprint if you ever need it, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Everything's in here. Pre-drafted documents, account transfer protocols, even a recommended financial advisor who specializes in post-divorce wealth management. I thanked him, put the folder in my car, and driven home to a wife who barely looked up from her phone when I walked through the door. Now, sitting in that rest stop, I opened my glove compartment and pulled out Howard's folder. The papers were crisp, organized, waiting. I made a decision. By morning, I'd be someone else entirely. Someone who wasn't furniture. Someone who wasn't taking up space. Someone who was finally done being invisible. I spent the night in my car at that rest stop, dozing in the driver's seat with my jacket rolled up as a pillow. Not comfortable, but I'd slept in worse conditions during my years in the Army Reserve back in my 20s. By 5 a.m., I was awake, watching the sun creep over the Virginia hills. My phone stayed off. I knew it would be waiting when I turned it on. Missed calls, frantic texts. Maybe Jennifer had even called the police by now, reported me missing. The thought made me smile grimly. At 6, I drove to a diner off the highway. The place smelled like coffee and bacon grease. An older waitress with tired eyes brought me a menu. Just coffee and eggs, I told her, scrambled in wheat toast. While I waited, I finally powered on my phone. It exploded with notifications. 43 missed calls, 27 text messages, 3 voicemails. I listened to the first voicemail. "Daniel, where the hell are you?" Jennifer's voice was sharp with irritation, not concern. "You just disappeared. William's asking questions. Call me back." The second message was different. "Dad?" William's voice sounded uncertain. "Mom's freaking out. She says you didn't come home last night. Are you okay? Just let me know you're alive." I closed my eyes. William, my oldest son, 22 years old and about to graduate from Virginia Tech. He'd always been closest to me. Madison was Jennifer's daughter through and through, 18 and already developing her mother's cutting tongue. Jack, at 15, was still figuring out who he was. I texted William back. "I'm fine. Taking some time to think. Don't worry about me." His response came within seconds. "What happened?" I stared at that question for a long moment, then typed, "I'll explain soon. Trust me." The waitress brought my food. I ate slowly, methodically, thinking through my next moves. First, I needed to execute the account transfers. Howard's documents were clear. Everything was already legally separated thanks to paperwork Jennifer had signed years ago without reading. She thought she was signing refinancing documents. She'd actually been signing financial separation agreements. After breakfast, I drove to the bank where I kept my primary separate account. It was a small branch in Leesburg, far from our home in Alexandria. The manager, Patricia, knew me well. "Mr. Rivers," Patricia greeted me warmly. "What brings you in so early?" "I need to execute some transfers," I said, handing her the documents from Howard's folder. "These accounts need to be moved to new institutions. Today." Patricia's professional smile faltered slightly as she scanned the papers. "This is quite a bit of money, Mr. Rivers. Are you sure about this? Completely sure?" I replied calmly, "Completely sure." She nodded and got to work. 2 hours later, $1.2 million had been distributed across 3 different banks and 2 investment firms, all under my name only, all completely legal. I walked out of that bank feeling lighter than I had in years. Jennifer thought I was furniture. She was about to learn that furniture can walk away.